She sat in the dentist's chair, her heart racing. The soft hum of jazz filled the spotless room as Dr. Marcus Hill leaned closer, his smile calm but magnetic. "Open wide," he said smoothly. She smirked, her nerves melting into curiosity. "Only if you promise to be gentle," she teased, her voice low and playful. In that moment, fear turned into trust, and maybe something more was about to begin. Sarah had always hated dental appointments. To her, the sound of a drill buzzing behind a door wasn't just a noise, it was a memory. A painful flashback of sitting in a cold, sterile room as a teenager, hands clenching the chair's armrests, while an indifferent dentist barked instructions without ever meeting her eyes. The smell of antiseptic, the too bright fluorescent lights, the metallic taste in her mouth. They were all ghosts from her past that had followed her into adulthood. Now, years later, Sarah stood in front of a frosted glass door with a polished brass handle, staring at the neatly engraved sign. The letters gleamed under the soft overhead lights in the clinic's hallway, almost inviting her in. The smell here wasn't the harsh antiseptic odor she remembered. Instead, a subtle hint of lavender floated in the air, mingling with a faint trace of peppermint. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to convince herself this visit would be different. She was 30 years old, confident in most areas of life. Yet the thought of sitting in a dental chair reduced her to that anxious, trembling teenager all over again. Her fingers hovered over the door handle. "You can do this," she whispered to herself. The door swung open with a soft click, and Sarah's heels sank into a plush cream-colored rug. She blinked, momentarily stunned by the clinic's interior. This wasn't the sterile, unwelcoming dentist's office she had pictured. The lighting was warm, golden even, spilling softly from pendant lamps that hung like glowing orbs. Instead of the harsh antiseptic smell, the air was soothing and fresh. A slow jazz melody hummed through hidden speakers, its notes floating like whispers, calming her nerves. Behind a sleek marble counter, a receptionist with a bright smile greeted her. "Hi there, you must be Sarah. Welcome to Dr. Hill's clinic." Sarah managed a small smile and nodded, her heart still thumping against her ribs. She filled out a form, her fingers slightly trembling as she scrawled her name and medical history. "Dr. Hill will see you shortly," the receptionist said warmly. As Sarah settled into a cream leather chair in the waiting area, she glanced around. Everything about this place felt intentional. From the modern art on the walls to the strategically placed potted plants, it didn't feel like a place of fear. It felt comforting, safe even. Still, her anxiety gnawed at her. She absent-mindedly scrolled through her phone, trying to distract herself. But when she heard her name, spoken in a deep, smooth voice, she froze. "Sarah?" She looked up and saw him. Dr. Marcus Hill was taller than she expected, his presence commanding yet calm. He wore a crisp white coat over dark blue scrubs that somehow managed to look both professional and effortlessly stylish. His smile was warm, genuine, and immediately disarming. A neatly trimmed beard framed his strong jawline, and his deep brown eyes carried a calm intensity that made Sarah feel both nervous and strangely safe. "Hi, Sarah," he said, extending his hand. His voice was rich, soothing. "I'm Dr. Hill. Come on back, we'll take good care of you." She took his hand, surprised at how steady his grip was. Her own felt clammy, but he didn't seem to notice. Or if he did, he didn't comment. As she followed him down a softly lit hallway, she noticed the absence of the usual medical smell. Instead, there was a faint aroma of vanilla and something citrusy. The music followed them too, jazz blending with the sound of their footsteps. When they stepped into the room, Sarah's nerves returned. The chair was sleek and modern, upholstered, in soft gray leather, but its design was still unmistakable. It was a dental chair. A tray of shiny instruments rested nearby, neatly organized. Marcus noticed her hesitation. Hey, he said gently, his voice lowering as he gestured toward the chair. Don't worry. We'll go at your pace, all right? She met his eyes and was struck by the calmness there. It wasn't forced or rehearsed. It was genuine. Okay, she whispered, easing herself into the chair. He adjusted the headrest carefully, explaining each step. I'm just going to recline you back a bit. Nothing scary, I promise. His words carried a quiet reassurance that helped her unclench her fists. Marcus stepped aside for a moment to review her file on a tablet, giving her time to settle. So, he said casually, what brings you in today? Any pain or just a checkup? Just a checkup, Sarah said, her voice a little shaky. It's been a while. No problem, he replied with an encouraging smile. We'll take it slow. I'll walk you through everything as we go. Sound good? She nodded. Marcus put on his gloves and adjusted the overhead light, but he moved with an ease that made Sarah feel less like she was in a medical office and more like she was being cared for by a friend. All right, he said softly, leaning closer. Open wide. Sarah smirked, despite herself. Her nervousness slipped into playful boldness as she muttered, Only if you promise to be gentle. For a second, Marcus froze. Then laughed, a warm, genuine laugh that filled the room. Gentle is my specialty, he said smoothly, locking eyes with her for just a moment before getting to work. That brief exchange did something unexpected. The tension in Sarah's shoulders loosened. She felt herself relax under his steady hands, her fear fading with every calm word he spoke. Marcus narrated each step as he worked. I'm just checking your molars now. No cavities so far, he said, his tone casual but focused. Sarah found herself watching him as much as she could with her mouth open. He was precise and confident, yet his presence was comforting. Every movement was deliberate, and every word he spoke seemed designed to ease her mind. In between steps, he'd glance at her and smile, making sure she was okay. It was a simple gesture, but it felt personal. As the appointment progressed, Sarah realized something strange. She wasn't gripping the chair like she normally did. Her heart wasn't racing anymore. Instead, she was listening to the soft music, watching Marcus move with calm expertise and feeling safe. It wasn't just his skill as a dentist, it was his demeanor. He carried himself with quiet confidence, the kind that didn't need to be announced. She noticed how his voice dipped slightly when he asked if she was okay, how he waited for her nod before proceeding, and how every motion was slow, careful. For someone who had spent years dreading dental visits, this felt almost surreal. When Marcus paused to adjust the light again, Sarah smirked. You're very calm for someone holding sharp tools, she teased. He chuckled, glancing at her with an amused smile. I try my best to keep the drama out of dentistry. His humor disarmed her even more. She chuckled softly, the fear that had clouded her earlier now replaced with a strange mix of curiosity and attraction. The environment added to her comfort. Marcus had clearly designed the space intentionally. There were no harsh white lights or sterile blue walls. Instead, soft cream and warm gray tones surrounded her. The music, smooth saxophone and piano, created a rhythm that matched Marcus's calm demeanor. For Sarah, who had always associated dental visits with stress, this space felt almost like a spa, and Marcus himself felt like someone she could trust, not just because of his credentials, but because of the way he treated her like a person, not just a patient. All right, Marcus said, leaning back and making some notes. Everything looks good so far. You're actually taking great care of your teeth. Sarah blinked in surprise. Really? I thought, well, it's been a while. Don't worry about that, he said, his voice warm. You're doing fine. Something about the way he said it, calm, reassuring, made her feel like a weight had lifted off her shoulders. She wasn't just receiving a medical opinion. She felt seen. There was an undeniable ease between them now. She noticed how close he leaned in when checking her bite, how carefully he moved her head, how his cologne, a subtle blend of sandalwood and something fresh, lingered in the air. Their eyes met for a second too long when he reached for another tool. She quickly looked away, pretending to study a painting on the wall, but she felt the warmth rise to her cheeks. Marcus, for his part, maintained professionalism, but there was a glimmer in his eyes when he smiled that told her he wasn't, entirely oblivious to the tension in the room. Sarah realized she was no longer just waiting for the appointment to end. She was enjoying it. Her fear was still there, somewhere deep down, but it had been overshadowed by something unexpected. The quiet trust she felt in Marcus's presence was something she hadn't experienced in a long time, not just in a dentist's chair, but in life. Marcus finished the initial checkup, stepping back to give her space. "You're doing great," he said with a smile that somehow felt more personal than professional. Sarah sat up slightly, brushing her hair back from her face. "Thanks. I was actually really nervous." "I could tell," Marcus replied softly. "But you handled it well." Their exchange was simple, but Sarah felt like something had shifted. The room no longer felt intimidating. Marcus wasn't just a dentist anymore. He was someone she trusted. And maybe, just maybe, someone she was curious about. Sarah took a deep breath as Marcus adjusted the light above her. The glare from it should have made her uncomfortable, but somehow it felt softer here, warm even, like sunlight filtered through a curtain. She closed her eyes for a moment, grounding herself in the sound of jazz humming faintly from the speakers. Marcus's voice cut through her thoughts, low and smooth. "Doing okay so far?" She opened her eyes and nodded. "Yeah. Surprisingly okay." "Good," he said, offering a reassuring smile that reached his eyes. "That's my goal. Dentistry doesn't have to feel like punishment." His words carried a kindness that made Sarah's chest feel lighter. It wasn't just what he said, but how he said it, measured, calm, and warm. It reminded her of her grandfather's voice when she was a child, coaxing her out of hiding during thunderstorms. That same safe, protective feeling was here, in this chair with Marcus. Marcus adjusted her headrest gently. "I'm going to start with a full exam," he explained. "Nothing sharp yet, just a mirror and some light pressure." Sarah gave a faint nod, her lips curling into a nervous smile. "I trust you," she said softly, surprising even herself. Marcus paused, his brows lifting slightly, but his smile deepened. "Thank you," he said, his tone warm. "I'll take care of you." The way he said it wasn't flirty or rehearsed. It was simple, genuine. Sarah felt the tension in her shoulders begin to melt. She inhaled deeply, the citrus vanilla scent of the clinic mixing with Marcus's subtle cologne. He leaned closer, his gloved hands steady as he angled the mirror in her mouth. "Just let me know if anything feels uncomfortable," he murmured. "We'll stop immediately if you need to." The soft timbre of his voice filled her ears, drowning out the faint clinking of metal instruments. This wasn't like the cold, mechanical exams she'd had before. Every movement felt careful, deliberate. Sarah felt a laugh bubbling in her throat as Marcus squinted into her mouth, murmuring something about great molar structure. She lifted her hand slightly, tapping his wrist gently to signal she wanted to speak. "Am I doing okay?" she asked, her voice muffled. Marcus chuckled softly. "You're doing great. Honestly, your dental hygiene is impressive." Sarah blinked. "Really? Because I was sure I'd get a lecture." "Not from me," Marcus said, pulling back for a moment and smiling down at her. "I'm here to help you feel good about your health, not guilty." Sarah couldn't help it. She grinned. "I think you're the first dentist ever to say that." Then, "I'm doing my job right," Marcus said with a wink. That small gesture sent a warmth rushing through her. He wasn't trying too hard, wasn't crossing boundaries. He was just kind. Marcus leaned back in, his focus sharpening again. But Sarah couldn't stop herself from noticing things. The way his sleeves were rolled neatly to his forearms revealed toned muscles. The way his jawline sharpened slightly when he concentrated. The warmth in his eyes lingered every time he glanced at her to check if she was comfortable. She felt her breath hitch slightly, and she scolded herself silently. "This is your dentist," she reminded herself. But that didn't change the fact that the air between them felt charged, just enough to make her heart beat a little faster. Marcus cleared his throat softly, breaking the silence. "So, Sarah, what do you do for work?" "Oh," she said, grateful for the distraction. "I'm a graphic designer, mostly freelance now." "Nice," Marcus said, leaning back to take some notes. "That takes creativity. I admire that." Sarah smiled faintly. "Thanks. I admire people who can put their hands in someone's mouth and make them feel calm. That's a skill, too." Marcus laughed, a rich sound that filled the room. "I'll take that as a compliment." The next time Marcus leaned closer, Sarah found herself smirking again. "You know," she murmured, "you're very calm for someone, holding sharp tools." Marcus chuckled, his deep voice vibrating in her ears. "You have to be," he said lightly. "Dentistry is 90% trust, 10% skill." Sarah raised a brow. "Only 10% skill? That's not reassuring." He grinned, his eyes flicking to hers. "All right, maybe it's 60-40. She giggled softly, and the tension that had been clinging to her all morning dissipated entirely. Marcus leaned back again, setting down the mirror. "You're all clear so far?" he said warmly. "Want to take a quick break before we do the cleaning?" Sarah hesitated, then nodded. Marcus removed his gloves and leaned against the counter, giving her space. "Do you mind if I ask?" Marcus started softly. "Why were you so nervous coming in today? Was it just general anxiety about dentists?" Sarah exhaled slowly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Honestly? Yeah. I've had some not great experiences. Growing up, it felt like dentists didn't really care. I was just another mouth to them." Marcus's expression softened. "I'm sorry you felt that way," he said sincerely. "That's not how it should be. You deserve to feel safe here." Sarah met his gaze, surprised at how deeply he meant it. "Thanks," she whispered. Marcus's tone softened further. "You know, fear like that doesn't just disappear overnight, but every time you show up, even if you're nervous, that's strength." Sarah blinked, feeling her throat tighten slightly. She hadn't expected her dentist to sound like a therapist. "That's really kind of you to say," she murmured. Marcus offered a warm smile. "It's true. A lot of my patients come in with fear, and I don't take that lightly." "You're doing great, Sarah." As Marcus prepped for the cleaning, Sarah noticed something. The way he moved around the room wasn't rushed. He treated his tools like extensions of himself, placing them carefully, almost ceremonially, as if every detail mattered. She admired that about him. There was a quiet confidence in his actions that wasn't arrogant. It was steady, reassuring. She realized she hadn't thought about her fear in the last 20 minutes, not because the fear had vanished, but because Marcus had created a space where she felt safe. Marcus slipped his gloves back on. "All right, ready for the cleaning?" he asked. Sarah nodded. "Yeah, I think so." "Okay," he said softly. "We'll go slow. Just let me know if you need me to stop." The cleaning began, and Sarah braced herself for discomfort, but Marcus's touch was feather-light. He narrated every movement. "Just polishing now," he said softly. "This might feel like a tickle." Sarah found herself giggling at the unexpected sensation. "There it is," Marcus said with a grin. "I knew I'd get a laugh out of you." Most people hate this part, Marcus said, leaning in close. I mean, I kind of hate it, Sarah admitted. But you're making it easier. Marcus raised a brow playfully. Is that your way? Of saying I'm good at my job? Sarah smirked. Maybe, he chuckled. I'll take it. The way Marcus moved felt almost like choreography. He was close but never invasive, careful but confident. Sarah couldn't ignore how handsome he was, but it wasn't just his looks. It was his calmness, his humor, the way he treated her like a person instead of a nervous case. She found herself relaxing completely, her earlier tension replaced by something warmer. Curiosity. Marcus stepped back, removing his gloves again. Almost done, he said softly. You're doing amazing. Sarah. She blushed faintly at the praise, feeling like a schoolgirl. Thanks. I honestly thought I'd embarrass myself today. Marcus's eyes softened. You didn't. You've been a fantastic patient. As they paused, Sarah felt a surprising sense of intimacy. The quiet hum of the music, the soft glow of the room, and Marcus's steady presence. It all felt like more than a dental appointment. It felt like she was sitting with someone who saw her fear, respected it, and met her where she was. When Marcus leaned in for the final part of the cleaning, Sarah caught his gaze. For a moment, neither of them looked away. Something unspoken passed between them. A spark, fleeting but real. Her heart skipped a beat, and Marcus, sensing her nervousness, offered a small smile. Almost done, he said gently, breaking the moment. The cleaning finished smoothly. Sarah sat up, her shoulders finally relaxed. Marcus handed her a cup of water to rinse, his voice calm and proud. See? No trauma today. Sarah chuckled softly, feeling lighter than she had in years. No trauma, and maybe even a little fun, she teased. Marcus raised an eyebrow. I'll take that as a 5-star review. Sarah sat upright in the chair, the soft crinkle of the paper cover beneath her echoing in the quiet room. Marcus had stepped away to wash his hands, leaving her a moment to breathe. She touched her lips unconsciously, feeling the faint coolness of the fluoride treatment. It was strange, this warmth blooming in her chest. She'd entered this office trembling with nerves, but now her body felt loose, her shoulders no longer locked in tension. The scent of eucalyptus from a nearby diffuser filled the air, soothing her even further. When Marcus returned, his presence filled the room, not overwhelming but steady, grounded. He had that rare energy of someone who truly enjoyed making people feel safe. All done, he said, drying his hands with a soft towel. You did great, Sarah. Really, she chuckled, her voice still soft from nerves. I'm just glad I didn't bolt out of the chair screaming. Marcus smiled warmly. You'd be surprised how many people want to. You held your ground. That's strength. His words landed with surprising weight. She felt her cheeks flush, as if he'd complimented more than her bravery in the dental chair. Marcus moved with easy confidence, placing the tools back in order on the tray. Sarah found herself watching him, her gaze following the movement of his hands, the way his forearms flexed as he worked. He wasn't just handsome, he was intentional, precise, and warm, qualities that pulled her in like gravity. He glanced over his shoulder at her and caught her watching. Sarah quickly averted, her gaze pretending to inspect the framed certificate on the wall, but Marcus's smile widened slightly. You okay? He asked softly, breaking the quiet. Yeah, she said quickly, biting her lip. Just decompressing, I guess. That's fair, he said, leaning back against the counter. His voice was calm, like velvet against her nerves. Dental anxiety is real, but you handled it beautifully. There it was again, that reassurance, that kindness. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. She decided to tease him, partly to mask her own flustered feelings. So, do all your patients get this much praise, or am I special? Marcus raised an eyebrow, amused. Oh, you're definitely special, he said smoothly. Sarah blinked, surprised at his straightforwardness. She expected him to chuckle or brush it off, but instead, his gaze held hers for a moment longer than usual. There was no trace of teasing in his tone, just a calm sincerity that made her heart skip. Marcus walked over, removing his gloves and tossing them into the bin. You know, he said lightly, I can tell a lot about a person by how they handle the dentist's chair. Sarah tilted her head, intrigued. Oh yeah? What does mine say about me? He leaned slightly against the edge of the counter, arms crossed. That you're strong. Even when you're scared, you don't let fear stop you from doing what needs to be done. That's rare. His words were simple, but the way he said them, low, steady, and genuine, made her chest tighten. She wasn't used to being seen. Like that? Not by a stranger, and certainly not by someone who looked at her like she was more than just a nervous patient. You really notice all that from a dental cleaning? She teased, though her voice was softer now. Marcus smiled faintly. I notice more than teeth, Sarah. The air shifted between them. It was subtle but undeniable. The steady hum of the soft jazz in the background now felt like a soundtrack to something neither of them was saying out loud. Sarah looked down at her hands, clasped in her lap. I don't hear that often, that I'm strong. Marcus tilted his head slightly, his expression softening. You should. You are. It's obvious. She swallowed hard, surprised by the emotion building in her chest. She wasn't expecting this kind of intimacy in a place that had always terrified her. And yet here she was, feeling safer than she had in months. Marcus stepped closer, not in a way that felt invasive, but with the kind of quiet confidence of someone deeply attuned to the other person's emotions. Sarah, he said gently, thank you for trusting me today. His voice was warm, sincere. It sent a shiver down her spine. She looked up, meeting his gaze. You made it easy. The corner of his mouth lifted. That's the job. No, she whispered. That's who you are. Marcus blinked at her words, and for a moment he seemed slightly caught off guard, not by what she said, but by the raw honesty behind it. Open wide, he had teased earlier, but now his tone was softer, his presence gentler. Sarah realized this wasn't flirtation for him. This was a connection. She gave a small, nervous laugh. You really are gentle, you know. I try to be, he said with a half-smile. People deserve that. Not everyone thinks that way, she murmured. I do, he said firmly. And that conviction, that simple statement, made her heart beat faster. Marcus leaned slightly on the arm of the chair, and Sarah felt her pulse quicken. His scent, fresh, clean, with a hint of sandalwood, surrounded her. She tilted her head to meet his gaze, and for a heartbeat, they just looked at each other. Her nerves weren't from fear anymore. They were from something else entirely. You're nervous. Again, Marcus said softly, almost like an observation rather than a question. Sarah let out a breathy laugh, not for the same reason as before. His brows lifted slightly in curiosity. Oh? She smirked, a spark of boldness flickering. Yeah, but I think I'll survive. Marcus chuckled, and the sound sent warmth through her. There was no denying it now. The chemistry between them was electric, quiet, but intense. Sarah's heart thudded in her chest as Marcus's gaze lingered, his usually calm demeanor shifting just slightly. Sarah, he said gently, you don't have to be afraid of me. She blinked, startled. I'm not, she whispered. He smiled faintly. Good. Because I'm not afraid of you either. The tension in the air thickened, not uncomfortable but charged. It felt like standing on the edge of something beautiful and unknown. Marcus moved back slightly, giving her space, but his gaze didn't waver. You know, I'm not supposed to say this, but you're easy to talk to. Sarah tilted her head. You're not supposed to say that? He chuckled. Not exactly professional. Maybe I like unprofessional, she teased softly. Marcus's laughter was low and rich, filling the small room. Dangerous words, he murmured. Sarah exhaled slowly. Honestly, I don't remember the last time I felt this at ease, especially in a dentist's chair. Marcus leaned closer, his expression soft. That means a lot to me. I'm serious, she said quietly. This feels different. He studied her for a moment, and then his voice dropped lower. It is different. There was a pause. Sarah's heartbeat echoed in her ears, the quiet hum of music filling the silence. Sarah, Marcus said softly, if I'm overstepping, tell me. But I feel like there's something here. Her breath caught. She hadn't expected him to. Say it out loud. You're not wrong, she whispered. Marcus moved closer, just enough for her to feel the warmth radiating from him. I don't want to make you uncomfortable, he said gently. You don't, she whispered back. They were close enough now that Sarah could see the flecks of gold in his dark brown eyes, the subtle curve of his lips as he smiled softly. Good, he murmured. Marcus reached up, brushing a stray strand of hair from Sarah's face. The touch was feather-light, careful, as though he was afraid to break the moment. Sarah's breath hitched, her chest tightening with a mix of nerves and excitement. You're shaking, he said softly. She gave a small laugh. I guess I am. Why? She swallowed hard. Because these feels different. His smile deepened. It does. They stayed there for what felt like forever, the world outside melting away. Sarah felt a connection she couldn't explain, like this wasn't just flirtation, but something deeper, something real. Marcus's voice was soft but steady. You don't have to be afraid of being seen, Sarah. Not here. Her throat tightened, emotion welling up. She didn't realize how much she'd needed to hear that until now. Thank you, she whispered, her voice trembling. Marcus's expression softened further, always. The moment didn't end with something dramatic. There was no movie-style kiss, no rushed confession. Instead, Marcus leaned back slightly, his gaze warm but respectful. You were amazing today, he said, his tone firm but kind. You should be proud of yourself, Sarah smiled faintly. You're pretty amazing too, he chuckled softly. I try. As Marcus helped her out of the chair, Sarah felt a strange mix of emotions, gratitude, attraction, and a sense of safety she hadn't felt in years. He walked her to the reception area, but before she left, he turned to her. Hey, he said softly. I don't usually do this, but I'd like to see you again. Outside of the office. Sarah froze, her heart racing. Really? Marcus's smile was soft but sure. Really? She felt her lips curve into a genuine smile. I'd like that. As Sarah walked out of the office, she glanced back one last time. Marcus stood at the doorway, hands in his pockets, a small smile on his face. It wasn't a dramatic goodbye, but it felt significant. There was an unspoken promise in that look, that this was just the beginning. The evening after her appointment, Sarah sat curled up on her couch, knees tucked under a blanket. The soft glow of her laptop illuminated her face, but she wasn't working. She was staring at the wall, lost in thought. She couldn't shake the memory of Marcus's voice, calm and reassuring, or the warmth in his gaze when he'd said he wanted to see her again. It wasn't the kind of attention she was used to. It wasn't rushed or performative. It was steady, grounded, real. Sarah wasn't someone who trusted easily. She'd been let down enough to know better. And yet, something about Marcus felt different. Her phone buzzed. A simple text lit up her screen. "Hope you're feeling okay tonight. You were incredible today. Marcus." Sarah felt her chest tighten in a good way. She typed back before she could overthink. "Feeling great. Thank you. For everything." Almost instantly, another text came. "I meant what I said earlier. I'd like to see you again. Maybe dinner?" Her fingers hovered over the keys, nerves, bubbling in her chest, but she couldn't stop the small smile from spreading across her face. I'd like that. The following days passed in a blur. Sarah found herself replaying moments from the appointment. Marcus's calm tone, his laughter, the way he'd brushed a strand of hair from her face. She couldn't remember the last time she'd looked forward to a date this much. It wasn't just attraction. It was curiosity. She wanted to know more about him, about the man who made her feel safe in a place that had always terrified her. When the evening finally came, Sarah spent far too long debating what to wear. She finally settled on a soft, cream-colored blouse and high-waisted jeans, a balance of casual and elegant. She arrived at a small, intimate restaurant Marcus had suggested, her nerves buzzing. When she spotted him waiting at a table near the E window, her breath caught. Marcus looked effortlessly handsome in a dark button-up shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms. His smile when he saw her was warm and genuine, and something about it instantly put her at ease. "You look amazing," he said as she sat down. Sarah felt her cheeks flush. "Thank you. You look, well, like you always do." He chuckled softly. "I'll take that as a compliment." Over dinner, conversation flowed easily. Sarah learned that Marcus had chosen dentistry because he wanted to help people feel safe. He'd been terrified of dentists as a child, and he vowed to change that. Experience for others. "I don't want anyone to feel like they're just another name on a chart," Marcus said, his voice low and sincere. Sarah listened, captivated. "You're really good at that, making people feel safe." Marcus met her, gaze, his eyes soft. "I'm glad you felt that way. That means everything to me." She hesitated, then smiled. "I did. More than I expected to." As the night went on, Sarah found herself opening up about her own fears, not just of dentists, but of letting people in. "I've had bad experiences," she admitted softly, "with people I thought I could trust." Marcus's expression softened. "I'm sorry, Sarah." She gave a small shrug. "It's made me cautious." "That makes sense," he said gently. "But you're here. That says a lot about your strength." She looked at him, surprised by his ability to see through her defenses. "You keep saying that." "Because it's true," he said simply. By the time dessert arrived, the tension between them was undeniable. But it wasn't rushed. It was a slow burn, the kind of attraction built on trust and genuine interest. Marcus leaned slightly forward, resting his chin in his hand as he watched her talk. Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks, but didn't look away. "You know," Marcus said softly, "I'm glad you came in that day." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "You mean for the cleaning?" He chuckled. "For everything." After dinner, Marcus walked her to her car. The night was cool, the sky clear and dotted with stars. Sarah felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the wine she'd had. "Thank you," she said softly, "for tonight, for everything." Marcus smiled. "It was my pleasure." There was a pause, the kind of pause where time seemed to stretch. He reached out, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Sarah's breath caught, but she didn't pull away. "I'd like to see you again," he murmured. Sarah's lips curved into a small smile. "I'd like that too." Over the next few weeks, Sarah and Marcus saw each other regularly. Their connection deepened with each conversation, each shared laugh. Marcus never pushed. He gave Sarah space when she needed it, but he was always steady, always present. One night, as they sat on his couch watching a movie, Sarah found herself resting her head on his shoulder. It felt natural, like she'd been doing it for years. "You're easy to be around," she murmured. Marcus smiled softly, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "That's mutual." Sarah noticed something changing within herself. For years, she'd avoided vulnerability, afraid of being hurt. But with Marcus, she felt safe enough to let her guard down. She found herself sharing things she'd never told anyone. Childhood fears, heartbreaks, insecurities, and Marcus listened, really listened. "You don't have to be perfect," he said one night, his voice firm but gentle. "Not with me." Sarah blinked back tears, overwhelmed by the sincerity in his words. As their relationship grew, Marcus let Sarah into his world too. She learned about his family, his struggles with balancing his demanding career and personal life, and his quiet dreams of opening a free dental clinic one day. "I want to help people who can't afford care," he said, his eyes lighting up. "Everyone deserves to feel safe and cared for." Sarah admired him deeply, not just for his skill, but for his heart. Their first real challenge came when Sarah had to return for a more serious dental procedure. Even though she trusted Marcus completely, the thought of being in that chair again sent waves of anxiety through her. Marcus noticed immediately. "Talk to me," he said softly, taking her hand before the procedure began. "I know I'm safe," Sarah whispered, her voice shaking. "But it's hard." Marcus squeezed her hand gently. "You are safe. I've got you." Those simple words carried her through. After the procedure, Marcus stayed with her until she felt steady enough to go home. He even made her soup and checked in constantly. "You didn't have to do all this," Sarah murmured, touched. "I wanted to," Marcus said firmly. "Taking care of you isn't a burden. It's what I want." That night, Sarah found herself in tears. Not from pain, but from the overwhelming realization that she was loved, deeply and genuinely. "I don't know why you're so good to me," she whispered as they sat on his couch. Marcus cupped her face gently, his expression soft. "Because you deserve it, Sarah. You've always deserved it." Those words broke. Something open in her, a lifetime of self-doubt, fear, and guardedness melting away in the warmth of his love. Weeks turned into months, and their bond grew stronger. Sarah found herself laughing more, trusting more, living more fully. One evening, as they walked through a quiet park, Marcus stopped suddenly. "Sarah," he said softly, "I know this might sound fast, but I want you to know I'm in this, all the way." Sarah blinked, her heart swelling. "I know," she whispered. "I am too." Their relationship became a sanctuary, built not on grand gestures but on quiet consistency. Marcus's steady love helped Sarah heal, and Sarah's openness reminded Marcus why he'd chosen a career built on compassion. In time, Sarah no longer feared the dentist's chair. She no longer feared love either. Months later, Sarah sat in Marcus's chair again, this time calm and smiling. "Open wide," Marcus teased gently, the same words that had started it all. Sarah giggled. "Only if you promise to be gentle." Marcus leaned close, his smile tender. Always. It was more than a promise for dental care. It was a vow for their future together. As Sarah left the office that day, her hand intertwined with Marcus's, she couldn't help but marvel at how much had changed. What started as fear had become trust. What started as trust had become love, and it all began with a single act of gentleness. Marcus's kindness transformed Sarah's fear of dentists into an emotional breakthrough. A patient-dentist relationship blossomed into love, symbolizing trust's power to dissolve walls. Marcus's steady presence showed Sarah she was worthy of care, reinforcing that love is built in the quiet moments. Both characters grew. Sarah learned to trust, and Marcus deepened his purpose through love. Their love story wasn't just romantic, it was about healing and mutual empowerment.